honestly, it's about asking questions. Like if you understand what is motivating them instead of assuming it, and then, then you can actually custom tailor your approach, to benefit them.
Welcome to the Disruptance Podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric Forney and Michael Bounds.
Every week on the show, we aim to disrupt the way real estate agents and entrepreneurs think about life and business in order to make them more profitable and productive. And this week, Mike, what I want to disrupt the way entrepreneurs and real estate agents think about is having all the answers. Because what I want people to understand is that answers are worthless. Everything of value is determined in business by the questions we ask, not by the answers we provide. And so what I want to unpack today is how to ask powerful questions and how to detach from the idea of needing to have all the answers in order to get the best outcome via the best questions.
Absolutely. I'm kind of dealing with lawyers right now. So and I've dealt with lawyers in the past, and you're
not a fugitive, right?
No, I'm not a fugitive,
all right, cool,
but just in business dealings. I adopted my niece a couple of years ago. And I noticed when we were going through a trial, my lawyer did a great job of asking questions in order to kind of paint a picture. And what's really great is with me, I'm a wordsmith, so I'm a question person. I really appreciated that. It was really important to me in the future when I'm hiring people that they are curious about me and they ask a question deeper.
What's an example, or what did you appreciate about your attorney from a question asking perspective?
So you ask questions, not only like I alluded to this earlier. You want to understand where people are coming from, so then you can kind of guide them, based on the information they have. Unfortunately, a lot of times what we do is we rely on muscle memory and we don't listen, and we just kind of data dump. We all know the salesperson just dumps on you. That's just a lazy way to sell. Yeah. If you, instead of like dumping, why don't you get to understand what is their pain button, their hot button, and then you can use that to fuel them and to fuel you in that relationship.
So many salespeople too are quick to assume that like price is the pain point for everybody, and it might not be. It might just be like, I need this done quick. I'll pay whatever it takes to have this handled. But a lot of salespeople put their self-limiting beliefs in, and they're like, that's a lot of money for me. I don't know. Maybe
it's about asking questions. Like if you understand what is motivating them instead of assuming it, and then then you can actually custom tailor your approach, to benefit them.
Which leads me to my first question that I think is a powerful question is, why now? Like, why are you doing this now? Why do you want to do these videos now? Why do you want to start this thing now? Then you uncover motivation. Okay.
The only thing I would tweak slightly, I love that question, because what you're getting at is the idea of you're driving timeline-based motivation, right? So the root of the question, why now, is a timeline-based motivation. The downside to the formatting of the question, when I think about how do we ask more powerful questions, I would tweak it just slightly what about now is important, or what about right now.
It's less confrontational.
Correct. I have to defend myself just slightly less.
Yeah.
The question's fantastic, Tyler.
I think asking anybody why, it overwhelms them.
And if you have a person that is not as sensitive to time, then it kind of comes like, if I could take my time, like then you kind of throw up like, well, I could take my time, and then you actually create a barrier versus, and they might stick to that because they're like, oh, now I can take my time, when you could have talked them or had a conversation of, overcoming, a few things. You could have got them to maybe possibly they could have moved sooner or later. So
So I think that's one of the great lessons, though, in thinking about asking powerful questions is understanding is that one, we have to understand, there are multiple degrees and types of questions that we're going to ask, right? We know the stereotypical version of the closed and open-ended question, and I've always thought that's teaches someone nothing about asking effective questions, right? Is that you hear the first grade level sales teacher or coach or sales leader say, ask open-ended questions. Well, thanks. That doesn't really tell me anything about how to ask good questions. Honestly,
elementary. Like that, at this point in the game, like that's par for the course. Like, come on, like, where are we in elementary school?
That's right. So then the difference then between the technique of open-ended question is understanding is that I can adjust just subtle changes in words creates a different outcome or a different response. So what about now is important, is different than why now, which is also different than how about now,
right?
Or
right.
How does now impact your whatever
and
that
you
is.
have to structure that question to get the result, the answer that you're looking for. I've told you guys, we've talked about this on the podcast. I could tell my wife, your face stops a clock or your beauty transcends time. And how I phrase phrase my question will elicit a different response. So it's just being really super mindful of that.
So I find that what rooted questions almost always compel the person to expound upon their answer.
Yes. And another thing is I like to ask a question deeper. So like, okay, when I'm qualifying a client, I like to use, I'm about scripts. So the reason why I like scripts is because I can see trends after years of using the same skeletal script. So like, for example, when I'm trying to qualify someone, I have a certain questions that I'm asking, and then within those questions, I ask a question deeper.
I want to make sure I understand something really quick. So, because what you originally elicited in my mind when you said that you like scripts, and then your next statement was you have a series of questions. Let me make sure I understand. So, when you say that you like scripts, do you have scripted questions that you ask?
Yes. Perfect.
I want to make sure that people understand that, though, because if you go back to episode 65, where we talked to Dale Archdeacon about conversations that convert, we talked about how most scripts that people learn in sales are really ineffective unless your prospect responds precisely with what you've rehearsed and scripted ahead of time. What you're saying, though, is that subtle nuances that you have scripted questions.
Yes.
And those scripted questions then elicit a response that you start to be able to identify a pattern for.
Yes. And then I have a second, deeper scripted question in order to elicit. And so then I get similar responses every time.
Yeah.
And you can see patterns of the people that who can buy now and who can't, just based on how they answer those questions.
And so it becomes like a decision tree of responses, right?
Yes.
You ask a question, the very first one, and then the answer is yes, no, whatever. And you can now start to funnel them through that decision tree of whatever your goal is that you're trying to accomplish. But I think that's really important for the listener to understand, is that there's a big difference between learning scripts, which are typically thought of as like objection handlers, which I hate because they're ineffective. You can punch someone in the face with your words and get an outcome, but it doesn't mean it's the most effective way to do it. And that's what objection handlers are for the most part, is they're sales punches
right in the face. Like, this is why you need to do this.
That's right. And it might be convincing, but it doesn't create alignment, and it's not nearly as empowering as effective questions. And so for anyone who's listening who thinks that scripts equals objection handler, I want to challenge them to think that questions are how we resolve objections.
Right. So, I want to make sure that we're clear. Like, I don't want to, people think that I'm, when I say scripts, I want to be clear on scripts. The script that I use is a question. And then based on the result, the objective is to convert the sale. Do you want to buy a house? Yes or no? And then based on that answer will determine what my next course of action is. Am I setting an appointment with this person, or am I going to say, hey, can I follow up with you on every couple months just to circle back with you from time to time?
Yeah. So we talked about there are some like key words to start effective questions with. One of the most effective being what. And I think about defining questions into the difference between problem questions and people questions. Okay, so a question about a problem is different and requires a different internal set of processing than a people-related question or person-related question does. So let me think about a way to try to give you an example of that. Is that especially we see this in when coaching salespeople and entrepreneurs. Is a lot of times they bring problems into the conversation.
Yes.
And if I ask a lot of questions about the problem, then I get a very different response and resolution than if I ask person-related questions. And so the example might be is like, hey, I didn't make my calls today. Hey, I didn't show up at the office on time. Hey, I didn't set any appointments today. Now, if my question is problem-based, it might be, okay, well, what got in the way of you accomplishing what you said you were going to accomplish? That creates a very different response than internally, especially for that person, than like the idea of what made you believe that not accomplishing your goal, that not showing up on time was an option, or what about that story gets you closer to your goals, or what about the way you're thinking about your inaction,
right,
makes you feel more comfortable. The difference is those are not the greatest examples of questions in the moment. And however, understand the difference.
Yeah, it's the hard. This is the hard part. Like the result is based on a series of questions or a system, right? So if you still keep getting that result, what is it that you can change within this system to change to where you get a different result while you're on time or whatever that thing is? So like, that's the hard part. Like, it's all about asking good questions.
And so the example I get right now in coaching real estate agents especially is the market. Right? That's the problem I keep hearing is the market. I don't have any listings because the market, or I didn't get my buyers. I didn't have any pendings last week because I wrote offers. The market. And my follow-up question typically to that agent is, what examples in the current market make that statement untrue? What agents in your market are having success?
What are they doing?
I just want to
go figure out what they're doing.
I first just want them to acknowledge that there's someone else out there who's getting a result despite the exact same market. Because if they don't see that's a story or a limitation that they've placed upon themselves, we can't move forward effectively. There can't be progress until we accept reality. And so questions based on the person's belief or the person's way of thinking will get us a different framework to make progress from than questions based on problems themselves.
Got it.
So I need to ask person-related questions typically in order to help someone move forward.
You got to get them to see
that's right
that it's a mindset and that they, there's other people in the market
that's right.
that are performing.
That's right.
So then you just have to be able to, okay, what is it that they're doing? And then just modeling that behavior.
Yeah. So I might ask the question then, what's the upside of holding on to this belief? What's the upside to believing the market is the problem? Right? What is that getting you?
Right.
Because what I want them to articulate is that there is a level of comfort and certainty in believing a limitation for not getting a result.
Right.
Right. Like if I brought a problem that says, hey, I haven't lost any weight, and I'm unwilling to accept the reality or place blame on the fact that I haven't been to the gym and I haven't ate on a prescriptive diet, then I'm not going to move from my position of being a victim. And what we need is people in sales, especially, to move into the position of being victor, which requires person-based questions, not problem-based.
Yeah. I'll have an agent, and he'll be like, hey, I need to make more money. I'm like, bro, you made 10 calls last week. Like, you set no appointments. Like, of course you need to make more money because you ain't selling nothing. So, but is it because you're not making phone calls or setting appointments? Or is it because, like, I always say that you got to have receipts. And the receipts will dictate the lagging indicators. So you got to go to the gym, then you lose weight. Nobody wants to go to the gym.
Yeah. When we think about asking great questions, one of the third thing that we need is we have to have a genuine curiosity. And that sounds really ridiculously naive. And
I don't think so at all.
Okay, good.
I don't. I think you do. I think it's a part of your business.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who think they have curiosity, and I want to challenge everyone to really be introspective about their true curiosity towards life in general, right? As we know that toddlers ask, they estimate 400 questions a day. And yet as adults, we oftentimes ask fewer than 20. And so at some point in time, we were curious about life. Yeah. And then as adults, what we became is thinking that we knew the experts about life instead of having that curiosity, right? And so practicing curiosity to build the habit of being curious and questioning everything is a great way to be a lot better at asking good questions.
Yeah. I would say, like, asking good questions, like, this is the thing. I keep telling you guys, like, people aren't moving to something, they're moving from something. So, or when you're working with your people on your staff, understanding what drives them, the only way to really get to the bottom of that is by asking good questions.
And so thinking about asking good questions and thinking about curiosity means that when you're in a conversation or when you're in the position of being a salesperson, what you have to do is you have to detach from, this is how I think about it, right? This is how it goes in my head, at least, is you have to detach from being in the story of your mind, the conversation in your head, and being present truly with the conversation that you're in, right? Is the mistake that most junior or lesser successful salespeople make is being caught up in the conversation of their mind, thinking about how they're going to respond instead of listening to the present conversation. Yeah. Because if we're present with the conversation, what we get is curiosity. Because there then are blanks, right? As we know that when we're watching a movie and we're fully like engaged in the movie, whenever there are those suspenseful moments, or whenever there's like, just suspense in general, or there are aspects of a movie that we don't know the answers to, we want to know, right? Is that the suspense is not knowing. That's how we have to be in conversations to be effective as salespeople is believing that we don't know everything yet, either about the prospect or about the prospect's situation or about that particular conversation, which then means once we've been able to detach from that story of our mind, we have to have the confidence to ask the question that puts us in the position of sometimes being the dummy or naive or not being the expert. Or we have to ask the question that goes, hey, when you said this, tell me more about that.
To be honest with you, I think that's part of our problem. We think we're the expert. And the problem is our client or the person we're working with isn't an expert, and we have to bridge that gap. We have to meet them where they are. And you just use questions to do that. Absolutely. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, absolutely. You're spot on because we have to be a great listener in order to ask great questions. Yeah. And the mistake that people make in listening is that we're often listening to respond instead of listening to understand. And when we listen to understand, what we know is we almost always have a question that we should be asking. Yeah. Because there's something that we didn't understand in communication almost always. In every conversation, there's something that we don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know how many. I just had this experience with a person. I'm not going to. And I was just like, I talked to their assistant. I was like, that dude just does not listen. Like, he literally just bulldozed.
So how did you know that?
Because I asked good questions.
Like,
so
what is he doing?
Because it made me feel like I didn't feel heard after I had a conversation with the guy. Like, he would give me a solution without, like, I'm saying, look, this is where I'm coming from. We then get a solution based on this? Yeah. And so, but no matter what I would say, he had his canned solution, which let me know he wasn't listening.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, or at least he wasn't listening with any empathy, right? He wasn't listening to your perspective. He wasn't listening to provide a true solution to what you wanted, right? And that's the challenge and problem and drawback with scripts, is that scripts create this robotic, neutered emotion response that is ineffective when someone really wants to feel heard and to get some sort of desired outcome, because questions change that, though. Yeah. Right? As the question would make you feel as though he was listening, because really what a question would do in that particular instance is it would give you the permission to expound more upon your wants and needs.
That's what I do. I use it's a script in that it's routine. I do it over again, but I use instead of using it for overcoming objections, I use it for collecting like whatever information that if I'm lead generating or whatever. So.
Tyler, as someone who's been in sales in the past and listens to podcasts incessantly and always ask good questions, what's the effective thing question wise for people, for the listener to know?
I'm just trying to be like Elon and just take my time to just take an answer.
I love it.
I would say, well, like what you just said, Eric, when have we had a time where you're like, dang, that was a good question, Tyler?
You know, most of the times they are questions that cause me to like, anytime that I think that someone asks a really good question, is it something that like stops my thought or interrupts my thought pattern or interrupts a pattern in general that makes me question either what I believe or what I just said or makes me question the like truthiness of something that I'm thinking or feeling or believing.
Like to me, I think we put a lot of pressure on like the one great question.
Yeah,
I think it's actually a series of questions. So like I try to get a series of questions so that I can kind of get clarity around. And then also I use questions to expand my target. So a lot of times people, for example, will ask a question like, what's my budget? And so I don't like asking that question a lot of times, especially if I'm working with a first-time home buyer. I'll say, what are you paying a month in rent? And I want to get them to, actually I want to bridge that gap. So are you comfortable talking like from a monthly payment perspective, or are you more comfortable talking from a budget perspective? But getting clear that when you're having the actual same conversation, and then I use questions in order to like bridge the gap. So like, or in order to set a floor. So this is your budget. Okay, great. If I found you the perfect home, up to how much would you be comfortable paying if I found you that perfect home? So not only am I getting like a realistic budget, I'm also trying to get a stretch. And then I do that throughout the whole process. So I'm trying to expand my target versus limiting my target. I use questions to do that.
Yeah, I think the questions become, we're looking for clarity, and then we're looking to interrupt patterns or to cause people to think about things in a way in which they haven't thought about them before. Yeah. That's where the magic of sales and progress happens is when people think about the situation in a way in which they haven't been forced to internally themselves. Right? Because when I think about a salesperson, you know, if we go back really to one of the earliest episodes we did, which was the idea, which was relationships don't matter. What we talked about is the challenger was the most effective salesperson, and the challenger is the salesperson who questions the prospect in a way in which challenges their perspective so that they can get their desired outcome. It's not like you ask questions to be a jerk and to be obstinate, but you're asking questions so that the prospect can actually unwind and unpack and then express their desired outcome so that you can help be the conduit to what they're trying to attain.
Sometimes they don't even understand, like when you have a conversation, they don't even understand what their problems are. And
That's right.
By asking good questions, you'll give them clarity around what it is that they, why they're making this move.
Yeah. So if you're talking to a salesperson, so if you're talking to a prospect in real estate, maybe, some of those questions could be like, what is it costing you, either for your health, your family, your relationships, to stay in your current environment, to stay in your current home, to stay where you are, right? Because no one thinks about the opportunity cost of inaction until they're prompted to, right? And yet, oftentimes, when you think about what staying the same is actually costing you, then you have the awareness of it, which means you can't unsee it.
That's a paradigm shift.
Yeah,
you're trying to shift their paradigm. Like when I'm meeting with clients and they ask about my commission or they ask about they'll ask certain things like, okay, is it more important to you to sell your home fast, or you want to, make the most amount of money? So absolutely, just getting clarity around that so you can take action.
Yeah. And then thinking about what would it be, when I'm talking with agents, oftentimes, a leveling question can be, what would it be worth to you to solve these problems? Yeah. Because what I need them to do is quantify what this pain point is actually creating for their business, because if not, it's too easy to ignore it. It isn't until we actually get really clear internally with our own pain or what the true cost
Sacrifice.
is. Yeah, that's when. Yeah, we're not willing to act and make the sacrifice until we understand what we're giving up.
Right.
By doing nothing.
Right.
I use the example that.
So doing nothing actually hurts you.
Correct.
So then you have to take action.
That's right. So the best example I can come up with analogy-wise of this is that we all, if you walk in my house right now, I will tell you for a fact that there is laundry on some floor in this house, guaranteed. And we walked past it, right? And or at least the three of us who live here did. And we walked past it on sometimes multiple times over the course of a day or a week, or hell, if you have teenagers, probably for months, right? And what happens is we learn to tune out that laundry on the floor. We desensitize from it. We ignore it. However, when someone comes along and they ask you to bring your awareness to it, then you can't walk by it and unsee it anymore. Right? You can't walk by it and not notice that you're walking past that obstacle on a regular basis. It becomes noise in your field of vision. And so what I'm trying to do with prospects then is I'm trying to help them see the noise that they ignore.
The blue pill or the red pill.
That's
Once
right.
you unsee it, you can't
That's right, you can't unsee it. And so the powerful questions then are designed then to help us bring that red pill, blue pill experience.
So they have to take action. There is no them staying put.
That's right, because staying put is also being in pain.
Yeah.
Right, is bringing awareness to the negative present of inaction.
Love it, man.
And so that's really in a sales conversation where we're trying to design those curiosity-based questions, is to bring awareness to the actual negative present, because we become immune to that. But it starts with
that's finding their pain. So then you can that's all this is, y'all. Like finding their pain, so then you can help them make a informed decision.
That's right. And so questions become there's a series. As we wrap this up, I want people to understand that questions. There's no such thing as being good or bad at asking questions, because we all know that toddlers are fantastic at asking questions, and so we all have the ability and the skill set to ask them. The problem is, do we have the practice?
Right.
Did we quit approaching life and relationships with the curiosity of toddler questions? And if so, then we need to get in the practice and the habit of asking more questions in order to be better at sales and better at consulting to solve problems.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, and we, as everything that's going on right now, we don't like to be uncomfortable. And so you gotta we feel like we're intruding, we feel like we're doing things, but when I go to the doctor's office, he's gotta ask me if I come in there, he's gotta ask me questions about it. So you have to be a consultant, you have to be a professional, and you have to ask really good questions in order to get the result that you're looking for.
One last question. Any resources that somebody might go to, or videos or interviews where you can recall from the top of your head where they could check out?
Oh man.
Where there was some good question asking.
That is a really good question, Tyler. People will tell me somewhat regularly that I ask good questions, and I've tried to really think about where does that come from. One, I think I'm genuinely really curious about everything. If you saw my YouTube playlist or what my YouTube algorithm looks like, it's ridiculous. It is the most disconnected, tangent-filled garbage, and yet I'm curious about everything on my YouTube feed, and so I say that because we all, I think, have this innate curiosity about life, so long as we first accept that we don't know nearly as much as we like to think that we know. We have to accept that we are all nothingness from an intelligence perspective in the grand scheme of the complexity of life. When we make peace with that, then we can have curiosity, because we know that we're starting from ground zero almost every day in a total intellect standpoint. But when I think about being curious, I think about some of the best people to study are those that ask really good questions. In my mind, I've always said that that Howard Stern is the best at asking questions to generate the best results and the best answers, the best responses and entertainment from his guests.
Entertaining result, get that entertaining clip.
I did not like Howard Stern in the 90s, the porn version of Howard Stern, right? The private parts version. Not really a fan of that version. As he's gotten older and his show has matured and evolved, the last decade of Howard Stern questions has become such a great case study of how to ask curiosity-based questions to elicit the most information from someone that you're in a conversation with.